What happens when one of Hollywood's most controversial actors sits down with one of daytime television's most outspoken hosts? You're about to find out, and trust me, this interview goes completely off the rails in ways nobody saw coming. Before we get into it, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me your thoughts on this whole situation, because what unfolds here is absolutely wild. So Ezra Miller walks onto the view set and the audience gives a mixed reaction. You can hear some applause, but there's also this uncomfortable tension in the room. Joy Behar is sitting there with that look on her face, you know the one, where you can tell she's already loaded up and ready to go. The other co-hosts are smiling, trying to keep things light, but Joy isn't having it. Ezra sits down, and before anyone can even get through a proper greeting, Joy jumps right in. She says, "So Ezra, let's just address the elephant in the room. You've had quite a few years, haven't you?" The way she says it, it's not a question, it's an accusation. Ezra's smile fades immediately. They lean back in their chair and say, "I'm here to talk about my work, Joy. I'm here to talk about the art." Joy doesn't miss a beat. She leans forward and says, "Well, your work has been overshadowed by your behavior, wouldn't you say? I mean, we can't talk about your career without talking about everything else." The audience goes quiet. You can feel the shift in the room. One of the other co-hosts tries to jump in, saying something about how everyone deserves a chance to move forward, but Joy cuts her off. She says, "No, I think people deserve answers. Ezra, you've had multiple incidents, multiple allegations, and you disappeared for a while. Now you're back, promoting a movie, and we're all just supposed to forget?" Ezra's jaw tightens. They say, "I'm not asking anyone to forget anything, Joy. I've been working on myself. I've been in therapy. I've been taking accountability." But Joy interrupts and says, "Accountability? Accountability would be sitting here and actually explaining yourself instead of hiding behind publicist-approved statements." Ezra's face flushes. They say, "I'm not hiding behind anything. I'm here, aren't I? I showed up." Joy fires back immediately. She says, "You showed up because you have a movie to sell. Let's be honest. If you didn't have a movie coming out, would you be here talking to us?" Ezra pauses, and you can see them trying to keep their composure. They say, "That's not fair." Joy laughs, actually laughs, and says, "Not fair? You want to talk about what's fair? Let's talk about the people you've hurt. Let's talk about the families who were affected by your actions." The tension is thick now. The other co-hosts are looking at each other, clearly uncomfortable. One of them tries to steer the conversation by saying, "Ezra, why don't you tell us about the film? What drew you to this project?" Ezra takes a breath and says, "Thank you. Yes, the film is really about redemption and second chances, which is something I deeply connect with right now. It's about a character who has made mistakes and is trying to find a way back." But Joy isn't letting it go. She cuts in again and says, "So you saw yourself in this role? You related to a character who messed up?" Ezra says, "Yes, exactly. I think a lot of people can relate to that. Making mistakes is human." Joy tilts her head and says, "But there's a difference between making mistakes and creating a pattern of destructive behavior. Wouldn't you agree?" Ezra's voice gets sharper. They say, "Joy, I don't know what you want me to say here. Do you want me to sit here and flagellate myself on national television? Is that what this is?" Joy responds, "I want you to be real. I want you to stop giving these vague, therapy-speak answers and actually own what you did." Ezra's hands grip the armrests. They say, "I have owned it. I've apologized. I've done the work privately, because that's where real change happens, not on a talk show." Joy shakes her head. She says, "But you're a public figure, Ezra. When you mess up publicly, people want to see public accountability. Otherwise, it just looks like you're trying to rehab your image for your career." Ezra leans forward and says, "Maybe that's how you see it, Joy, but that doesn't make it true. You don't know me. You don't know what I've been through. Joy's tone shifts, getting more intense. She says, "You're right, I don't know you personally. But I know what I've read. I know what's been reported. And frankly, a lot of it is disturbing." Ezra's face hardens. They say, "And you believe everything you read?" Joy says, "I believe credible reporting, yes. I believe when multiple people come forward with similar stories, there's probably some truth there." Ezra stands up slightly, then sits back down, clearly agitated. They say, "This is exactly the problem. Trial by media, trial by public opinion. Whatever happened to innocent until proven guilty?" Joy counters immediately, saying, "What happened to protecting vulnerable people? What happened to believing victims?" Now Ezra's voice raises. They say, "I never said don't believe victims, Joy. Don't put words in my mouth. What I'm saying is that I'm also a human being who deserves the chance to heal and move forward." Joy says, "And what about the people you hurt? Do they get to heal? Or do they have to watch you back on magazine covers and red carpets like nothing happened?" The audience is dead silent. One of the co-hosts tries to call for a commercial break, but Joy waves her off. Ezra says, "You're being incredibly hostile right now." Joy responds, "I'm being honest. Maybe you're not used to that. Maybe you're used to softball interviews where everyone protects you, but that's not what we do here." Ezra laughs bitterly and says, clearly, "This is an ambush. This isn't an interview. This is a hit job." Joy's eyes widen. She says, "A hit job? You agreed to come on this show, Ezra. Nobody forced you. If you can't handle tough questions, maybe you shouldn't be doing press." Ezra says, "Tough questions are fine, Joy. But you're not asking questions. You're making accusations and demanding I defend myself against your personal judgments." Joy says, "My personal judgments are based on facts, based on what's been reported by credible journalists." Ezra shoots back, "And I'm telling you that there's context you don't have. There's nuance you don't understand." Joy says, "Then explain it. Give us the context. Give us the nuance." Ezra pauses, clearly wrestling with how much to say. They finally say, "Some of it is still in legal proceedings. I can't talk about everything." Joy pounces on that. She says, "How convenient. You can't talk about the things that make you look bad, but you can talk about your movie." Ezra's face reddens. They say, "That's not what I said. You're twisting my words." Joy says, "I'm not twisting anything. I'm pointing out that you want the benefits of being a public figure without any of the accountability." The other co-hosts are visibly uncomfortable now. One of them says, "Maybe we should let Ezra actually answer without interruptions." Joy looks at her colleague and says, "I'm letting them answer. They're just not saying anything of substance." Ezra's voice cracks slightly as they say, "I don't owe you my trauma, Joy. I don't owe you every detail of my lowest moments for your entertainment." Joy's expression softens for just a second, but then she says, "This isn't about entertainment. This is about responsibility. You have a platform. You have influence. And when you abuse that, there are consequences." Ezra says, "And I've faced consequences. I've lost jobs. I've lost relationships. I've lost parts of myself." Joy says, "And you're getting it all back now, aren't you? With this movie. With this press tour." Ezra looks directly at Joy and says, "You really think I'm getting it all back? You think any of this is easy?" Joy says, "I think you're resilient. I'll give you that. But I also think you're avoiding real accountability." Ezra stands up this time, for real. They say, "I came here in good faith, Joy. I came here to have a conversation, not to be attacked." Joy stands up too, matching Ezra's energy. She says, "Sit down, Ezra. We're not done here." Ezra looks at her with disbelief and says, "Are you serious right now?" "You don't get to tell me what to do," Joy says. "You're on my show. You agreed to be here. So yes, sit down and finish this conversation like an adult." The audience gasps. You can hear murmurs rippling through the crowd. Ezra stands there for a moment, clearly deciding whether to walk off or stay. Finally, they sit back down. But their body language is completely closed off now. Arms crossed, jaw set. They say, "Fine, let's finish this." Joy sits back down and says, "Good. Now, let's talk about the specific allegations. There were reports of you threatening people, behaving erratically in public spaces, and there was that incident in Hawaii." Ezra cuts her off and says, "I'm not going to litigate every tabloid story on national television, Joy. That's not why I'm here." Joy says, "Then why are you here?" "Because it seems like you want to promote your movie without addressing any of the real issues." Ezra takes a deep breath and says, "I'm here because I believe in second chances. I believe people can change, and I'm here to show that I'm trying to do better." Joy says, "Trying isn't enough. People need to see actual change, actual growth. What have you actually done to make amends?" Ezra says, "I've reached out privately to people I've hurt. I've apologized. I've made financial restitution where appropriate." Joy raises her eyebrows. She says, "Financial restitution? So you threw money at the problem?" Ezra's voice gets louder. They say, "That's not what I said. Stop twisting everything." "I'm saying I've tried to make things right in every way I can," Joy says. "But some things can't be fixed with apologies and money, Ezra. Some things leave lasting damage." Ezra looks down for a moment, and when they look back up, their eyes are watery. They say, "Do you think I don't know that? Do you think I don't live with that every single day?" Joy's expression doesn't change. She says, "I don't know what you live with, Ezra. That's the point. You're not letting anyone see the real remorse. You're giving us talking points." One of the other co-hosts finally manages to interject. She says, "Joy, maybe we should acknowledge that Ezra is here and willing to have this difficult conversation. That takes courage." Joy turns to her and says, "Courage would be facing this head-on instead of dancing around it." Ezra says, "I'm not dancing around anything. You're just not satisfied with any answer I give." Joy leans back and crosses her arms. She says, "You're right. I'm not satisfied, because I don't think you've actually learned anything. I think you've learned how to sound like you've learned something. There's a difference." Ezra's voice shakes with anger now. They say, "That is incredibly condescending, Joy. You sit here in your chair, judging me, when you don't know anything about what I've been through." Joy says, "Then tell me what you've been through. Make me understand." Ezra pauses, struggling. They say, "I've struggled with mental health issues. I've struggled with substance abuse. I've struggled with fame and pressure and expectations. And yes, I made terrible decisions. I hurt people, and I have to live with that." Joy says, "A lot of people struggle with those things and don't hurt others." Ezra's hands clench into fists. They say, "You're right, and that's on me. But it doesn't mean I'm a monster. It doesn't mean I don't deserve a chance to rebuild my life." Joy says, "Nobody's calling you a monster, Ezra, but you can't expect people to just welcome you back with open arms when you haven't done the real work of rebuilding trust." Ezra says, "And how do you suggest I do that, Joy? What would satisfy you? What would satisfy everyone out there who's decided they hate me?" Joy says, "Maybe start by being vulnerable, by being honest, by showing real emotion instead of this defensive, combative energy you're bringing right now." Ezra laughs, a sharp, bitter sound. They say, "You think I'm not being vulnerable? You're attacking me on live television, and I'm sitting here taking it. How much more vulnerable do you want me to be?" Joy says, "I want you to take responsibility without the excuses, without the 'but I was struggling' or 'but the media twisted things.' Just own it completely." Ezra stares at her for a long moment. Then they say, "I own it. I made mistakes. I hurt people. I was out of control." Is that what you want to hear? Joy says, "It's a start, but it needs to come with action. What are you doing differently now?" Ezra says, "I'm sober. I'm in therapy 3 times a week. I've cut ties with people who were enabling my worst behavior. I'm working with a team of professionals to help me manage my mental health. I'm trying, Joy. I'm really trying." Joy nods slowly. She says, "Okay, That's something. But here's my question. Why should we believe this time is different? You've had public apologies before. You've had quiet periods before. And then the behavior comes back. Ezra's voice cracks. They say, because I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I don't want to live like that anymore. I don't want to hurt people anymore. I don't want to hurt myself anymore. The studio is completely silent now. Even Joy seems to pause, considering Ezra's words. But then she says, I hear you. I do. But words are easy. It's the follow-through that matters. And a lot of people have been burned by you before. Ezra wipes their eyes quickly and says, I know. And all I can do is show up every day and try to be better than I was yesterday. That's all any of us can do. Joy says, except most of us aren't doing it under a microscope. Most of us aren't being photographed and interviewed and scrutinized. That's the price of fame, Ezra. You wanted this life. Ezra shakes their head. They say, I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to tell stories. I didn't sign up to be a public punching bag, Joy says. But that comes with the territory. When you're in the public eye, people are going to watch everything you do. Ezra says, and that's the problem. People are so obsessed with watching me fail that they don't want to see me succeed. It's like everyone's waiting for me to mess up again so they can say, I told you so. Joy says, can you blame them? Based on your track record? Ezra's face flushes with anger again. They say, yes, actually, I can blame them. Because everyone deserves the opportunity to change. Everyone deserves grace. Joy says, grace is earned, Ezra. It's not just given. Ezra says, so what do I have to do? How many hoops do I have to jump through? How long do I have to prove myself before people will just let me live my life? Joy says, as long as it takes. That's the reality. You don't get to put a timeline on redemption. Ezra slumps back in their chair, looking defeated. They say, this is exhausting. Joy says, I imagine it is, but it's necessary. Ezra looks at her and says, is it though? Is this public interrogation really necessary? Or is it just good television? Joy's eyes narrow. She says, don't try to flip this on me. I'm not the one who created this situation. You did. Ezra says, and I'm trying to fix it. But you won't let me. You keep pushing and pushing. Joy says, because I don't think you've hit bottom yet. I don't think you've truly confronted what you've done. Ezra's voice rises. They say, how dare you? You don't know what I've confronted. You don't know the nights I've spent hating myself. You don't know the work I've done in private. Joy says, then stop keeping it private. If you want people to believe you've changed, you need to show them. Ezra says, I'm showing them by being here. By doing this interview even though I knew it would be hostile. By continuing to show up even when it would be easier to disappear. Joy says, and I respect that, but showing up is the bare minimum. What else are you doing? Ezra takes a shaky breath and says, I'm working with organizations that help people with mental health and addiction issues. I'm donating my time and money. I'm trying to turn my mess into something that can help other people. Joy says, that's good. That's actually good. Why didn't you lead with that? Ezra says, because you didn't give me a chance. You came out swinging from the first question. Joy pauses, and for the first time, she looks slightly apologetic. She says, maybe I did, but you have to understand, a lot of people are angry. A lot of people feel let down. Ezra says, I get that. I do. But I'm also a person. I'm not just a headline or a cautionary tale. I'm a human being who made mistakes and is trying to do better. Joy nods slowly and says, okay, I can acknowledge that, but you also have to acknowledge that the people you hurt are human beings too, and they don't owe you forgiveness just because you're trying now. Ezra says, I know they don't. I've never expected forgiveness. I just want the chance to prove that I'm not that person anymore. Joy says, and what if you are? What if this is just who you are, and all the therapy and sobriety in the world won't change it? Ezra looks stung by the question.